look at that. I do not recall whether it specifically addresses sex control.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. We'll probably have to move on from there. We do have a couple other questions, but I can forward them on to John. They're probably a little specific to the person asking the question, so that would be fine. But once again, I would like to thank John immensely for his time in this forum. It's a great opportunity to have someone of your stature and your knowledge here, John. And like I said to Josh, we can't say thank you enough for being part of the forum.
My pleasure. Thank you, Peter.
All right, so next, and if you've just joined, make sure that you've got your interpretation set on English or Japanese. The next part of it, we will be moving to our Japanese presenter and our Asia Pacific Representative Director, Takahiro Yoshimura, to talk to Uda-san about his restaurant and business and hatchery, not hatchery, but farming area. Once again, I would say persevere with the interpretation, everybody. We'll work through it. They're doing a very, very good job, the interpreters. So it's a very hard thing in a live environment. So if you're there, Takahiro, and we can swing to Tsuda-san's restaurant, we can all see what's on the menu.
はい、ピーターさん、
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. So, Tsudau Suisan restaurant, that's where I am. And next to me is Yusuke Tsuda, Mr. Yusuke Tsuda from Tsudau Suisan. So, Tsudau Suisan is known to Japan, a great producer of the oysters, and they are enhancing their activities widely. And I'm looking forward to his presentation. But first, Tsudau Suisan, would you please, Mr. Tsuda, to introduce your company? So in 1948, for the first time in Hyogo Prefecture, Murotsu is a place where my parents started this business. And still today, we do the fishing, not only aquaculture, but we also own the 11 vessels, and we have about 70 people working for us.
And next slide, please. So when did you take this picture? So for this picture, it's quite an old one, 1978, 1948, or even before that. So it's a very old, and then from the old time ago, we started at Tsudau. This is evidence that we are operating in old age. And then you have lots of banner or fishing board flags. And this is a culture of Japan. And then when did you start the breeding of the oyster? About 20 or 25 years ago, we started this oyster farming, breeding. And then for Tsudau, located and then natured oyster in Murotsu in Japan. Murotsu is 600 kilometers west from the Tokyo, and then 300 kilometers west from Osaka. And then for the oyster breeding, what is the characteristics of the oyster breeding in Murotsu? So the characteristics of Murotsu, so in Japan, the temperature is pretty mild and warm all over throughout the year. And Murotsu's ocean is pretty shallow. So just like our Four Seasons in Japan, it's get pretty hot in summer, but a very cold temperature in the winter. So we have a great difference in between winter temperature and then the summer temperature on the ocean. And then oyster grows very fast. Yes. So we have lots of forest and then very mineral-rich water flows into the Gulf. So from the seeding to the shipment, it takes around 8 months. And then today, at Murotsu, and for most of the Japanese areas, the Japanese oyster is not natured in the intertidal, but in the subtidal area. So I'd like to ask the method how you do in a subtidal way. So for Tsudau Suisan, from the production or breeding to the sales and the processing and a restaurant and exporting, you are wondering. And this photo shows it's early in the morning after the harvesting and then unloading on the shore. So we have 70 members, including the members in the restaurant. So in the early morning for the fishermen, and then processing and the restaurant, we do lots of management. So everything can be done with a one-stop, so-called one-stop operation. So we have every schemes and every steps in one stops. So it's pretty rare case in Japan. And then this is the floor chart of the processing area. So this is just several meters from the fishery. So the unloaded oyster, it's a very fresh and then raw, and sometimes we shipped as it is or exporting those to overseas, or sometimes do the processing and then shipping. So everything taken place within the same facility in one company. So that is a strength or strong point for us. And then you have a severe quality control. We have the HACCP introduced and certified. And then also for the facility is on the ocean or the near the ocean, and we care about lots of quality control. And then there is regulatory requirements for the exporting. So in line with that, we are controlling the quality. And then for exporting, so you're expanding the export. So we export 5 million oysters in a year. And then I think we have a growth potential going forward. So this is where we are. This is the restaurant that you are operating. So how many seats are there? 180 or less seats is available in this restaurant. So I want guests to enjoy our oyster. And then also, we don't but we can have the contact with the direct customers. So we try to provide that kind of environment to the customers. So this is the part of the menu. So other than oyster, you are producing another things. So we have another division other than oyster, trout salmon, natured one, or the natural salmon, or sardine or a white bait. We are also producing and providing. And then there is a promotion video from Tsudau, so I'd like to show you.
はい、すごくいいビデオですね、
So
本当
that
に。
was a very wonderful video, and I feel like starving, and I would try to eat. So for the bleeding method, I try to ask now.
はい、その、先
So
ほど言いましたように、
as I said,
海域
so in the ocean there is a depth, some sort of subtidal is the area that you are breeding the oyster. Then what kind of method are you using for the production? So for the breeding method, we have two ways. So first of all, we nature two types of the oyster. So on the left-hand side of the slide shows that this is Japanese traditional way using the raft farming. So this is a raft farming, so hanging culture method. And then the characteristics of this raft farming is the seeding in the naturally caught spots will be put it on the shell of the scallop, and then the nature will cultivate under the raft. And the other way is that is shown on the right-hand side of the slide. So the single seed after natured in the hatchery, the seed we cultivate in the basket. That is the other way. So this is will be the premium oyster, and then export it as the premium oyster, and then sell it with raw status. So there are two methods, and then the first one is using the raft as subtidal method.
So, as was discussed before, on the scallop shell, naturally caught spots were entered, and that were hanged in the rope and hanged in the raft. And so, so you can harvest once a year. Yes. And so seeding takes place in spring, and you'll be able to harvest sometime in fall. So about half a year, we ship them out. So what are the merits of having this system? You'll be able to use the ocean three-dimensionally, including the depth of the water. So the next step, the method, you only use a surface part and a shallow part. But with this method, you'll be able to use the ocean three-dimensionally. So quite efficiently, you'll be able to enjoy the good productivity. So what are the then demerit of hanging style method? Are there any challenges? Of course, in the sea, so they are in the water, in the sea water. So when the shells are weak, volatile maybe, you may have that kind of image, by the way. So you will put the naturally caught spots in the scallop shell. Sometimes the shape of the oysters are not uniform. So here you can see the seeded scallop shell, right? Now, this is a picture of the rafts, and what is usually the depth of the water. Murotsu Bay, the depth is about 7 meter to 7 meter to maybe 13 meters deepest. This is a new type of a raft, isn't it? Exactly. Before, we used to have the rafts made of wood or bamboos, but recently we use FRP type. So we can see here the harvesting scene. It looks like you produce quite a lot. In one the raft, how much oysters you get? About 10 to 15 tons of oysters farmed on one raft. That's a great volume, isn't it? Yes. So let us see the single seed triploid method. So would you please explain that method? Yes. So in Murotsu sea areas, we don't have a so-called tidal flat, but still, there are triploid. We use this artificial type seeds, and we were trying to this method. We call this a floating longline method. So there are many of this being explored. So this is a floating longline with a basket, and Tsudau Suisan for the first time succeeded in a mass production. So there is another name for this, Murotsu method, and this is being explored quite widely, isn't it? Yes, about 12 companies are doing this, and throughout Japan, many are introducing this floating longline method. So with this triploid system, there is no seasonal constraints anymore. That's what it means, isn't it? Yes. So the seeding timing shifted so that you'll be able to expand the harvesting time. So fresh oysters can be harvested all year round, and you can export it all year round. And so this is a picture of the aquaculture farming. Quite simple, isn't it? You have just one lobe, and then you add the basket to that, and then float. Right. So 70-meter, the rope line is used. Yes, usually in our case, 70-meter, the length of rope being utilized. And this method worked very well. And the rambling also fostered, promoted. Yes. The demerit of the earlier case, the traditional method were overcome because of this system. And so you produce the oyster with the uniform shape with this method. As I have seen, you have just one basket on the surface. So when it comes to the productivity, it looks a bit small, but how did you overcome this issue? By selecting the location. And so when the wave is high, and if the water is shallow, the rafting system is not appropriate. But this floating system can be used in those locations. And so you can maximize the benefits. So you might use a raft system rather than replacing them. There are some locations where the rafting system not appropriate. You can use this system instead. Yes, that's the image. What kind of a oyster you get? Yes, as you have seen, we have a floating longline system, and the rambling or movement of the oysters are promoted. And with this, ideal shell shape And inside, the oysters quite rich and quite delicious and good textures are appreciated. And you open or disclose the information, and a lot of visitors come to see this, and that's how the system were expanded throughout Japan. But in the future, what is your vision for Murotsu area? Well, here, Japanese farmers are looking always something new. I'm sure there is a lot more to be done, and I think more further progress or evolution will take place in our industry. We would like to see more movement and evolution into the future. Well, thank you so much for your presentation and discussion. So first of all,
Tsuda-san, that was beautiful.
Right.
Thank you.